War Commander Thekmal stood on the bridge of his crippled flagship, staring at the tactical display that showed the scattered remains of what had once been the most powerful fleet in galactic history. Of the 3,000 ships he had brought to crush humanity, fewer than 200 remained intact, and most of those were damaged beyond any hope of continuing the fight. Emergency klaxons wailed throughout his vessel as damage control teams struggled to contain fires and seal hull breaches caused by weapons that should not have been able to penetrate their advanced defensive systems. The silence that followed, the end of active combat, felt more terrifying than the battle itself had been. For 7 minutes, the void around Earth had been filled with explosions and energy. Discharges as human weapons tore through alien formations with devastating efficiency. Now the aftermath revealed the true scope of the disaster that had befallen the Council fleet, with wreckage drifting through space where proud warships had fought and died against an enemy. They had completely underestimated Fleet Admiral Nick. Roberts received the surrender request through standard diplomatic channels, transmitted from the alien flagship in the formal language that galactic civilizations used when admitting defeat. The message was brief and direct, requesting an immediate ceasefire and offering to negotiate terms for the withdrawal of surviving Council forces from human space. Roberts read the transmission twice before allowing himself to believe that humanity had actually won a victory that should have been impossible against such overwhelming odds. Captain Amy Nelson guided her damaged ship through the debris field that had once been the alien fleet, her sensors detecting life signs from scattered escape pods and disabled vessels drifting helplessly through the void. The Defiance had taken several hits during the battle, but her crew had fought with the desperate courage of beings who knew that surrender meant extinction for their entire species. Now they found themselves among the victors in a conflict that would be remembered throughout galactic history. The surviving alien commanders gathered in the council chamber aboard Thekmal's flagship, their faces reflecting the shock and disbelief that came from witnessing the complete destruction of everything they had believed about military superiority and technological advancement. These beings had conquered dozens of star systems and subjugated countless primitive species, but they had never encountered an enemy that fought with such ruthless efficiency and complete disregard for established rules of warfare. Captain Jake Harrison aboard the UES Liberty coordinated the rescue operations that followed the battle, working alongside alien survivors to save lives from the wreckage that filled the space around Earth. The diplomatic protocols that governed such situations had been written for conflicts between civilized species who understood the importance of minimizing casualties and treating prisoners with honor. Humanity's complete victory had created a situation that no galactic treaty had ever anticipated. Dr. Ruth Clark analyzed the battle data from her position in the Tactical Command Center, her computers processing thousands of sensor readings and damage reports to understand exactly how human forces had achieved such a decisive victory. The results confirmed what military strategists had suspected from the beginning. The Council fleet had been optimized to fight against enemies who shared their technological base and philosophical approach to warfare, making them vulnerable to tactics that no civilized species would ever consider using. Ambassador Carol Price arrived from Earth's diplomatic corps to negotiate with the defeated alien leaders, carrying instructions from President Helen Carter that would establish humanity's position in the new galactic order. The terms that humanity demanded were straightforward and non-negotiable: immediate withdrawal of all Council forces from human space, recognition of human sovereignty over all territories claimed by Earth colonies, and formal acknowledgement that humanity was not subject to Council authority or protection. War Commander Thekmal found himself in the unprecedented position of surrendering on behalf of species that had never known defeat in thousands of years of military operations. The Council's military doctrine had been based on the assumption that superior technology would always triumph over primitive weapons and tactics. But the humans had proven that assumption catastrophically wrong. Their victory represented more than just a military defeat. It challenged the fundamental beliefs that had shaped galactic civilization for millennia. The negotiations proceeded with remarkable efficiency as the surviving alien commanders realized they had no choice but to accept whatever terms humanity chose to impose. Ambassador Price presented the human demands with the calm professionalism of a diplomat who understood that her species had just earned its place among the major powers of the galaxy through superior force of arms rather than technological advancement or cultural sophistication. Fleet Admiral Roberts was promoted to Supreme Commander of the newly formed Terran Defense Force, with authority over all human military operations throughout known space. His first official act was to authorize the construction of a memorial honoring the human crews who had died during the battle, while his second was to begin planning defensive strategies that would prevent any future alien invasion from catching. Humanity unprepared. Captain Nelson received command of the first human interstellar patrol fleet, with orders to explore the galaxy and establish diplomatic contact with other species who might be interested in forming alliances with humanity. Her mission would be to demonstrate that Earth's victory had not been a lucky accident, but rather the result of military capabilities that other civilizations would be wise to respect rather than challenge. Carter addressed both humanity and the galaxy in a broadcast that established the principles that would guide human foreign policy in the post-war era. Earth would not seek to conquer other worlds or impose human authority over alien species, but neither would humanity accept any limitation on its right to expand and develop according to its own cultural values and technological preferences. Former war commander Vic Moll spent his time in captivity studying human military history and trying to understand how his forces had been defeated so completely by a species that every galactic expert had dismissed as primitive and weak. His analysis revealed the fatal flaw in Council thinking. They had measured human capability by technological standards while ignoring the most important factor in any military conflict, which was the willingness to do whatever was necessary to achieve victory. The story concluded with humanity taking its place as a major galactic power, respected and feared by species that had previously considered Earth nothing more than another primitive world to be conquered or protected. The Council's miscalculation had given humanity the opportunity to prove that technological superiority meant nothing when facing an enemy that approached warfare as a matter of species survival rather than civilized competition between honorable opponents who followed established rules and limitations. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the U.E.'s horizon and stared at the view screen in complete silence. After 30 years of space travel, 20 years in the Navy, and 5 years commanding deep space missions, he had never seen anything like this. The massive alien vessel hung in space near Jupiter, like a crystal cathedral made of silver and light. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Dr. Lisa Park stepped up beside him, her tablet in hand and her eyes wide with excitement. She was the best scientist Jake had ever worked with, smart as hell, and always ready for anything the universe could throw at them. Right now she looked like a kid on Christmas morning. "Captain, the readings are incredible," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "The ship is over 2 kilometers long, and the energy signatures are unlike anything we have in our databases. The materials appear to be some kind of biometallic compound that shifts and changes. This is it, sir. This is first contact. Tony." Rodriguez looked up from his communication station, his face pale but determined. He had been monitoring every frequency known to humanity for the past 6 hours since they first detected the alien ship. His equipment was the most advanced Earth had to offer, but he felt like he was trying to catch lightning with a butterfly net. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission," Tony said, his voice cracking slightly. It is definitely artificial and directed at us. The signal is complex, very complex. I am getting mathematical progressions, what looks like star charts, and something that might be language. Amanda Clark, the security chief, moved to her station and began running diagnostics on the ship's defensive systems. She was a former Marine who had seen action in the Belt Wars, and her instincts told her to be ready for anything. The alien ship had not shown any hostile intent, but she had not survived this long by taking chances. Weapons status? Jake asked without taking, his eyes off the view screen. All systems green, Captain, Amanda replied. No signs of targeting sensors or weapon locks from the alien vessel. They seemed to be keeping their distance, about 50,000 kilometers out. Jake nodded and walked over to Tony's station. The communications specialist was sweating as he worked to decode the alien transmission. Banks of computers hummed and clicked as they processed the incoming data stream. The signal was incredibly dense, packed with layer upon layer of information that seemed to follow patterns that human minds could barely grasp. How long to decode this? Jake asked. Tony wiped his forehead with the back of his hand. Sir, this is going to take weeks, maybe months. The signal contains what appears to be formal diplomatic protocols, ceremonial greetings, genealogical records, social hierarchies, and linguistic frameworks. There are mathematical proofs, philosophical treatises, and what I think might be poetry. They are sending us their entire cultural database. Dr. Park looked at her readings again. Captain, the energy expenditure required to transmit all this. Data suggests they consider this communication to be extremely important. They are using more power than our entire ship generates just to send us a greeting. Jake scratched his chin and considered the situation. The alien ship was waiting patiently while broadcasting what was clearly a formal introduction of staggering complexity. Every instinct told him that this was a historic moment that would change humanity forever. The protocols demanded that he wait for Earth Command to send specialists, linguists, and diplomats. The smart thing to do would be to maintain distance and let the experts handle first contact. But Jake Morrison had never been accused of being overly smart, and he had definitely never been good at following protocols when they got in the way of getting things done. Tony, can you transmit on the same frequency they are using? He asked. Yes, sir, no problem. The transmission method is actually quite straightforward once you filter out all the ceremonial complexity. Good. Open a channel. Dr. Park grabbed his arm. Captain, we should wait for instructions from Earth. This is too important to risk making a mistake. Jake looked at her with the same calm expression he had worn when leading fighter squadrons against pirate raiders in the outer system. Doc, they sent us a message. It would be rude not to answer. He walked over to the communications station and activated the microphone. Tony's eyes went wide as he realized what the captain was about to do. Amanda stopped her diagnostics and turned to watch. Dr. Park held her breath. Jake cleared his throat and spoke in the same tone he used when ordering coffee from the mess hall. Hello there. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Horizon. We come in peace. Would you like to talk? The bridge fell completely silent, except for the hum of the ship's systems. Tony's computers continued processing the alien transmission, but no new signals came in. The alien vessel continued to hang in space like a waiting monument. Sir, Tony said quietly, they have stopped transmitting. Minutes passed. Jake remained standing by the communication station, waiting for a response. Dr. Park checked her instruments repeatedly, but the alien ship showed no signs of activity beyond basic life support and propulsion. Maybe they didn't receive our message, Tony suggested. They received it, Amanda said grimly. Look at their ship. On the view screen, the alien vessel was slowly rotating to present what appeared to be its main sensor array directly toward the horizon. Lights along its hull were pulsing in rapid sequences that had not been present before. "They are scanning us," Dr. Park reported. "Full spectrum analysis. Everything from our hull composition to our crew's biological signatures. They are being very thorough." "Are they still receiving our transmission?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir. The channel is still open." "They are definitely getting our signal." Jake activated the microphone again. "We are still here if you want to respond. Take your time." More minutes passed. The alien ship completed its scans and resumed its original position. Then, slowly, new signals began coming through the communications array. Tony's equipment lit up like a Christmas tree as data streamed in. "Captain, they are sending another message," Tony said, his voice tight with tension. "This one is different. Much different." A new transmission was brief compared to the first one, but it still contained layers of complexity that made Tony's computers work overtime. Mathematical formulas cascaded across his screens, followed by what appeared to be star charts and technical specifications. "What does it say?" Jake asked. Tony worked frantically to parse the data. "Sir, I think they are asking us to follow them. They are providing coordinates for a location deeper in the system and what appears to be safe. Travel protocols." Jake looked at the alien ship on the view screen. It was already beginning to move away from Jupiter, heading toward the coordinates it had transmitted. Its movement was graceful and deliberate, clearly intended to be followed. "Well," Jake said, settling into his command chair, "I guess we are going to meet the neighbors. Tony, acknowledge their message and tell them we will follow. Amanda, keep all systems ready, but no aggressive actions. Lisa, start recording everything." As the Horizon changed course to follow the alien vessel, none of them realized that Jake's simple greeting had just caused the greatest diplomatic crisis in galactic history. The Galactic Council chamber on Nexus Prime had never seen such chaos in its 3-million-year history. High Mediator Veltar Kushon of the Zephyrian Collective stood at the center of the Great Hall, his crystalline form flickering between deep purple and bright red as his emotional state shifted from shock to outrage. Around him, representatives from 12 ancient species sat in their designated positions, each one struggling to process what they had just witnessed. Council. Speaker Zethrock of the Hegemony raised his forearms for silence. His massive bulk filled the ceremonial throne that had been carved from a single piece of neutronium, and his deep voice echoed through the chamber with the weight of absolute authority. For 2 million years, his species had maintained order in this part of the galaxy through careful diplomacy and rigid protocol. Nothing like this had ever happened before. "The recording will be played once more," Zethrock announced. "All representatives will observe proper analysis procedures and maintain ceremonial silence until the full presentation is complete." A holographic display activated in the center of the chamber, showing the sleek lines of the human vessel Horizon as it approached the Zephyrian diplomatic ship near the primitive system they called Sol. The audio quality was perfect, transmitted directly from High Mediator Veltar Quishin's personal recording devices. First came the Zephyrian greeting, exactly as it should be performed. Veltar Quishin had followed every protocol established over millions of years of civilized contact. The formal introduction included his full ceremonial name, his genealogical connections to the ruling houses of SciFiPrime, his diplomatic credentials verified by 17 different governmental bodies, and the complete historical context of his mission. The greeting also contained the ritual acknowledgement of the receiving species' right to exist, the formal request for permission to communicate, and the detailed explanation of Zephyrian peaceful intentions, backed by mathematical proofs and philosophical justifications. The transmission had taken 47 minutes to complete and represented the finest example of interspecies diplomatic communication in Council history. Then came the human response. "Hello there. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Horizon. "We come in peace. Would you like to talk?" The silence in the council chamber was absolute. Representative Quill of Many Colors from the Avian Consortium ruffled her feathers in distress. The crystalline ambassador from the Silicon Collective actually cracked along one of his primary faces. Deep Current Singer from the Aquatic Delphin Worlds made a sound that roughly translated, "What in the seven hells was that?" Veltar Cushion's color shifted to a deep orange that indicated severe emotional trauma. "Honored Council, you have witnessed the complete recording of first contact with the species that calls itself human. As you can clearly observe, they have committed every possible violation of civilized communication." He began counting on his delicate crystalline fingers. They provided no formal introduction or credentials. They offered no acknowledgement of our superior diplomatic status as representatives of the Galactic Council. They used casual language inappropriate for first contact situations. They asked a direct question without following proper request protocols. Most shocking of all, they expected an immediate response to their query. Elder Wisdom Keeper from the ancient ethereal species floated higher in his containment field, his energy patterns flickering with concern. His voice resonated directly in the minds of all present. "In 47 million years of existence, my people have never encountered such blatant disregard for basic civilized behavior. Are we certain these humans are actually intelligent?" "Their technology suggests moderate intelligence," replied the insectoid representative from the hive clusters. "Their ship design shows understanding of basic physics and engineering principles. However, their communication patterns indicate severe social developmental disorders or possible collective mental illness." Meanwhile, 300 light years away, Earth was celebrating the greatest moment in human history. President Maria Gonzalez stood in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by military advisors, scientists, and politicians, all watching the live feed from the horizon with barely contained excitement. "Captain Morrison has made contact," announced General Robert Hayes, chairman of the Joint Chiefs. "The alien vessel is leading our ship to what appears to be a meeting location. All systems remain green, and the aliens have shown no hostile intentions." Dr. Patricia Williams, the President's chief science advisor, was practically bouncing with excitement. "Madam President, this changes everything. We are no longer alone in the universe. The implications for science, technology, philosophy, and human development are beyond calculation." President Gonzalez nodded thoughtfully. She had been a senator when the deep space exploration program began, and she had always believed this day would come. "What do we know about their capabilities?" "Their ship is roughly 10 times the size of the horizon," General Hayes reported. "Energy output suggests technology significantly more advanced than ours, but not impossibly so. Captain Morrison estimates they are perhaps 200 to 300 years ahead of us in development." "And they want to talk," the President said with satisfaction. "That has to be a good sign." She activated the secure communication link to the horizon. "Captain Morrison, this is President Gonzalez. Congratulations on making first contact. The entire world is watching, and we are all very proud of you and your crew." Jake Morrison's voice came through clearly, despite the vast distance. "Thank you, Madam President. The aliens seem friendly enough, though they sure do like to talk a lot. Their first message would have taken our computers months to fully decode. What was your impression of their response to your greeting?" "Well, they stopped talking for a while, which I figured meant they were thinking it over. Then they sent us directions to a meeting place. Seemed straightforward enough." Back on Nexus Prime, the Council was reaching very different conclusions about the encounter. Emergency sessions had been called by 6 different species, and formal protests were being filed faster than the bureaucratic systems could process. The humans must be quarantined immediately," declared the representative from the Rigid Order Alliance. Their chaotic communication methods could contaminate proper diplomatic procedures throughout the galaxy. "I disagree," said Junior. Mediator Killandra from the Rathi delegation. She was young for a council representative, barely 300 years old, and known for her unconventional thinking. "Perhaps we should consider that different species might have different, but equally valid approaches to communication." The chamber erupted in shocked gasps. Several representatives began making the ritual gestures that warded off dangerous thoughts. Council. Speaker Zethrak slammed his ceremonial staff against the floor. "Junior Mediator Killandra, you will observe proper debate protocols. Such radical suggestions must be submitted in writing, reviewed by the Committee for Dangerous Ideas, and scheduled for discussion no earlier than the next formal session in 18 months. "But Speaker," Killandra protested, "if we wait 18 months, the humans might make contact with other species. Should we not establish communication guidelines before? The humans will follow OUR guidelines." Zethrak interrupted. "They will learn proper behavior, or they will be excluded from civilized galactic society." Unknown to the Council, President, Gonzalez was at that very moment authorizing the largest diplomatic mission in human history. Ambassador Frank Carter, a former businessman known for his direct approach and complete inability to tolerate bureaucratic nonsense, was being briefed for immediate departure to wherever the aliens wanted to meet. As the Council continued debating proper procedures for dealing with the human crisis, and as Earth prepared to send its most straightforward diplomat into the most complex political situation in galactic history, Captain Morrison and his crew continued following the alien ship toward what would become the most important meeting in the history of both civilizations. Neither side had any idea what they were getting themselves into. Ambassador Frank Carter stepped off the human shuttle and onto the docking platform of Nexus Prime with the same confidence he had used when walking into corporate boardrooms back on Earth. Behind him, Dr. Helen Wright carried her briefcase full of xenonthropological research. Commander Steve Adams kept his hand near his sidearm out of habit, and cultural attaché Rachel Kim tried to hide her nervousness behind professional composure. The alien welcoming committee stood in perfect formation. At the far end of the platform, 12 different species arranged according to some complex hierarchy that Frank did not understand and frankly did not care about. Each alien wore elaborate ceremonial robes and held ornate staffs of office that probably took hours to put on properly. "Remember," Rachel whispered, "we studied the protocols. Approach slowly, wait for the formal recognition, perform the greeting of peaceful submission, and under no circumstances speak until spoken to." Frank looked at the aliens waiting patiently in their fancy costumes. They had been standing there for 20 minutes without moving, apparently expecting the humans to follow some kind of script that would take another hour to complete properly. He had closed billion-dollar deals in less time than these people needed just to say hello. "Right," Frank said, and walked straight toward the alien delegation at his normal pace. Dr. Wright gasped. Commander Adams muttered something that sounded like a prayer. Rachel Kim actually stumbled as she tried to keep up while maintaining proper diplomatic posture. The aliens immediately began showing signs of distress. Several of them started making clicking sounds that their translators labeled as expressions of shock. The tall crystalline being in the center began flashing colors rapidly, between purple and orange. The insect-like creature on the left actually took a step backward. Frank stopped directly in front of the lead alien, extended his hand, and smiled. "Good morning. I am Ambassador Frank Carter from Earth. Thank you for inviting us to your station." "Hi." Mediator Veltar Cushion stared at the outstretched human hand as if it were a loaded weapon. The human had approached without permission, failed to perform the ritual of peaceful submission, spoken without being formally recognized, and was now making some kind of threatening gesture with his appendage. Honored human representative. Veltar Kushin managed to say, his crystalline form flickering with barely controlled panic. You have not completed the proper greeting protocols. You must return to the designated starting position and begin the ceremonial approach sequence. Frank looked confused. We already started. I told you who I am and said thank you for having us. What else do you need? The full diplomatic greeting requires 47 distinct ceremonial elements performed in precise order, replied the insectoid representative. You have completed exactly 0 of these elements correctly. Dr. Wright stepped forward, trying to salvage the situation. Perhaps we could review the protocol requirements and begin again. That would be acceptable, Veltar Kushin said with obvious relief. Please return to your shuttle, and we will restart the welcoming ceremony from the beginning. Frank looked at the aliens, then at his team, then back at the aliens. How long is this going to take? The standard greeting ceremony requires approximately 4 hours and 23 minutes to complete properly, came the answer. Commander Adams could not help himself. 4 hours? Just to say hello? The reaction from the alien delegation was immediate and dramatic. Several species began making distress calls in their native languages. The floating energy being actually flickered and dimmed. The aquatic representative in the water-filled suit began swimming in agitated circles. Direct questioning of ceremonial procedures is a severe breach of diplomatic protocol, Veltar Kushin announced. All participants must now undergo purification rituals before the greeting ceremony can begin. Purification rituals? Frank asked. These rituals require approximately 6 hours to complete and must be performed by certified ceremonial specialists. Frank did the math in his head. 10.5 hours just to properly introduce themselves, not counting travel time to wherever these purification rituals took place. He had negotiated the merger of 2 major corporations in less time than that. Look, Frank said, sitting down on a nearby bench without asking permission. I appreciate that you folks have your traditions, but we came here to talk about important things. Can we skip the fancy stuff and get down to business? The alien delegation reacted as if Frank had just declared war on the entire galaxy. The crystalline being began cycling through colors so rapidly that it looked like a living rainbow. The insect creature made a sound like steam escaping from a pressure cooker. 3 different species began what appeared to be panic responses. The human has violated the sacred space, announced a new voice. Council Speaker Zethrock himself emerged from the transport tube, his massive form casting shadows across the entire platform. No being sits in the presence of a standing diplomatic delegation without formal permission. Frank looked up at the imposing alien leader. Sorry about that. My back was getting tired from standing around. Would you prefer if I stood up? You will follow proper protocol, Zethrak declared, or you will be removed from this station immediately. Dr. Wright stepped forward quickly. Council Speaker, we apologize for any cultural misunderstandings. If you could provide us with detailed instructions, we would be happy to follow your customs. Zethrak gestured to one of his assistants, who produced a device that projected a holographic document into the air. The text was dense and appeared to go on for thousands of pages. This is the Codex of Civilized Interaction, Zethrak announced. It contains all necessary protocols for proper diplomatic behavior. You will study this document completely before any further communication will be permitted. Commander Adams squinted at the holographic text. How long is that thing? The Codex contains 847,312 pages of essential diplomatic guidance, came the reply. Rachel Kim, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke up. That would take months to read, let alone memorize. Preparation for diplomatic contact requires adequate time investment, Zethrak explained. Most civilized species spend several years studying the codex before attempting formal communication. Frank stood up slowly, ignoring the shocked gasps from the alien delegation. He looked at the massive document floating in front of him, then at the pompous aliens in their elaborate costumes, then at his own team, who were clearly wondering if their ambassador had lost his mind. "Here is what we are going to do," Frank said in the same tone he had used when firing incompetent executives. "I am going to give you our diplomatic guidelines. They are much shorter than yours." He pulled a single sheet of paper from his jacket pocket and held it up. The human diplomatic guidelines. Rule 1. Be honest. Rule 2. Be direct. Rule 3. Treat everyone with basic respect. That is it. 3 rules that fit on one page. The silence that followed was so complete that the only sound on the platform was the hum of the station's life support systems. "This is impossible," Veltar Quishin whispered. "Civilization cannot function with only 3 rules." "Our civilization works just fine," Frank replied. "We built starships, traveled across the galaxy, and figured out how to talk to aliens without needing a 1,000,000-page instruction manual." Zethrak drew himself up to his full height, which was considerable. "You will follow our protocols, or there will be no further communication between our species." Frank folded up his 1-page document and put it back in his pocket. "Then I guess we do not have much to talk about." He turned and started walking back toward the shuttle. After a moment of shocked hesitation, his team followed him. The alien delegation stood in stunned silence, watching the humans leave. In 800 million years of galactic diplomacy, no species had ever simply walked away from a formal first contact ceremony. As the human shuttle departed Nexus Prime, emergency sessions were being called throughout the Galactic Council. The humans had just declared diplomatic war on the entire established order of civilized space. What none of them realized was that this was only the beginning. 3 weeks after the diplomatic disaster at Nexus Prime, something unexpected began happening throughout the galaxy. Junior officers, young diplomats, and frustrated bureaucrats started requesting what they called informal meetings with human representatives. The meetings were supposed to be secret, but word spread quickly through the younger generations of a dozen different species. Lieutenant Sharp Ears Dancing of the Wrathy Fleet was the first to make contact. She had been stuck in the same junior position for 50 years because the promotion protocols required her to wait for her superior to either die or retire, which could take another 3 centuries. When she heard about the humans who ignored waiting periods and spoke directly to ship captains, she knew she had to meet them. She found Captain Jake Morrison in a small bar on the trading station at Kepler 438. The human was drinking something called coffee and reading reports on a simple tablet device instead of the ceremonial data crystals used by most species. He looked up when she approached and smiled. "You must be Lieutenant Sharp Ears Dancing," Jake said. "I got your message. Please, sit down." The young wrathy officer sat carefully, her fox-like ears twitching with nervousness. "Captain Morrison, I must confess that this meeting violates 17 different protocol requirements. I could be demoted for speaking to you without permission from my superiors." Jake took another sip of his coffee. "Then why are you here?" "Because in 50 years of service, I have never been allowed to make a single decision or offer a single suggestion. Everything must go through proper channels, which means everything takes forever and nothing ever gets done." "That sounds frustrating." "It is maddening," Sharp Ears Dancing said, her ears flattening against her head. "Last month, my patrol detected a dangerous asteroid on collision course with a civilian transport. By the time I filled out the proper warning forms and submitted them through the correct channels, the transport would have been destroyed. So I contacted them directly and told them to change course." "That sounds like the right thing to do." "My commanding officer gave me a formal reprimand for breaking communication protocols. He said I should have let the transport be destroyed rather than violate proper procedures. Jake set down his coffee and looked at the young alien officer. Lieutenant, how would you like to learn about human fleet operations? Word of these informal meetings spread through unofficial channels, faster than the council could track them. Dr. Lisa Park found herself teaching efficiency seminars to young scientists from 6 different species who were tired of waiting decades for research approval. Commander Steve Adams started holding tactical discussions with junior military officers who wanted to learn about rapid response protocols. The breakthrough came when Commander Deep Current Flows of the Delphin Navy approached Ambassador Frank Carter during a trade conference on Rigel Station. The aquatic officer had been monitoring human communication methods and was fascinated by their directness. Ambassador Carter, Deep Current Flows, said through his translation device, "My people have been watching your species with great interest. We find your communication style refreshing." Frank looked up from his lunch. "Refreshing how?" "You say exactly what you mean without wasting time on ceremonial nonsense. Yesterday, you completed a trade negotiation in 2 hours that would normally take us 6 months. 6 months? For what exactly?" "Proper consultation with all relevant committees, formal review of historical precedents, ceremonial approval from the Council of Elders, and ritual blessing of the final agreement. By the time we finish all the required steps, the market conditions have usually changed, and we have to start over." Frank pushed his plate aside and leaned forward. "Commander, how would your people feel about trying a more direct approach?" These conversations were happening all across the galaxy, and the Council's old guard was becoming increasingly alarmed. Reports flooded in about young officers ignoring chain of command, junior diplomats speaking directly to foreign representatives, and trade negotiations being completed in hours instead of months. Council Speaker Zethrak called an emergency session. "The human infection is spreading," he announced to the assembled representatives. "Their chaotic methods are destroying the stability that has maintained galactic peace for millions of years." "Perhaps," said Junior Mediator Kilandra of the Rathi, "we should consider that their methods are actually more effective than ours." The chamber erupted in shocked protests. High Mediator Veltar Kushin began flashing angry red colors. "Junior Mediator, you are suggesting that we abandon millions of years of civilized development in favor of primitive human barbarism. I am suggesting that when junior officers complete successful missions in hours, while senior officers spend months filling out forms, perhaps we should examine our priorities." "Order," Zethrak commanded. "The humans will be declared destabilizing. Influence and banned from all Council territories." But before the formal declaration could be made, the emergency sirens began wailing throughout Nexus Prime. The ancient warning system had not been activated in over 1,000 years, and many of the younger representatives had never heard it before. Admiral Stoneheart in battle of the Hegemony Defense Force materialized as a hologram in the center of the chamber. His 4 arms were spread in the traditional gesture of extreme urgency, and his massive form was scarred from countless battles. "Council Speaker," he announced, "the Void Hunters have returned. They have launched surprise attacks on the outer colonies of Kepler 442 and Ross 128. Civilian casualties are in the millions." The Void Hunters were the nightmare that haunted galactic civilization. Ancient enemies who appeared without warning, destroyed everything they encountered, and vanished back into the dark spaces between stars. The last attack had been 3,000 years ago, and it had taken the combined fleets of the entire Council 2 years to drive them off. "How many ships do we have in the affected systems?" Zethrak demanded. "None, Council Speaker. The nearest Council fleet is 6 days away at maximum speed. Then we must call an emergency defense session immediately. Summon the committee for Military Response, the Board of Strategic Planning, and the Council of Fleet Coordination. Admiral Stoneheart in battle looked grim. Council Speaker, by the time all committees are assembled and proper defense protocols are implemented, the colonies will be completely destroyed. We cannot act without following proper procedures, Zethrak replied. Civilization depends on maintaining order even in crisis situations. While the council debated which committees should be consulted first, Captain Jake Morrison was already moving. The Horizon had been conducting routine patrols near the Kepler system when the first distress calls came through. Instead of waiting for orders from Earth Command, Jake immediately changed course toward the attacked colonies. "Captain," Dr. Lisa Park said as they approached the battle zone, "we are going to need help. Our ship cannot handle multiple Void Hunter vessels alone." Jake activated the communication system and sent a message on the emergency frequency that had been established during the informal meetings with alien officers. "This is Captain Morrison to all ships in range. We have civilians under attack and need immediate assistance. Anyone who wants to help, follow us in." The response was immediate. Lieutenant Sharp Ears Dancing broke formation from her Raffi patrol and jumped to maximum speed toward Kepler 442. Commander Deep Current Flows diverted his entire squadron from their scheduled diplomatic mission. Within hours, ships from 6 different species were converging on the battle zone, all following the simple human principle of helping people in danger, instead of waiting for permission. As the improvised fleet prepared to engage the Void Hunters, the Galactic Council was still debating which forms needed to be filled out before military action could be authorized. The ancient conflict between efficiency and protocol was about to be decided by battle.